this Saturday as they face the reigning champs, two-time reigning champs, Kansas City Chiefs, in a battle of two first-place teams in their respective divisions. I think they're both actually already clinched their respective divisions. So there's not actually a ton on the line for this one, because if the Chiefs lose, they still have the 1 seed. If the Texans lose, they are still the 4 seed. But obviously, we're going to get a nice handle on where these teams stack up in that conference. Kyle, I'm going to start with you on this one. What matchup are you looking forward to the most?
Well, you got to have a plan if you're any defense and you're playing against one of the greatest of all time. And regardless if Patrick Mahomes has spats on both of his ankles, he's still the most dangerous guy out there. And I know for a fact that in that Houston defensive meeting room, they're not believing anything that they've read, because after Patrick Mahomes left the field with an apparent ankle injury, I heard all these aggregate accounts talking week to week. It could be a month-long injury. Well, Patrick Mahomes just absolutely spits in the face of those guys. Full participant this week in practice. And I know that he's got a chip on his shoulder anytime he plays against another quarterback that people consider elite. And CJ Stroud being on the Houston Texans means Patrick Mahomes woke up with a little fiery hair on his butt. I know that competitive nature he has. So for the Texans defense, you have to find a way to pressure him early and often. With Joe Thuney moving to the left tackle position, that means what, Mike? There is a left guard that's not an all-pro anymore. I fully anticipate them to test out that interior three. I've talked about how dominant from Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, that inside of the Chiefs offensive line has been. They haven't been as dominant recently. And, I got to call my boys and call them out, challenge them. We're getting to the winter months here. It's cold. You can't allow your guy who, albeit indestructible, he's a bit hobbled. You can't let him feel that early, because as a quarterback, I would imagine if you get hit early, you're thinking about that for the remainder of the game. If I'm a guard and I get my hand swiped, all I'm thinking about for the next 4 quarters is do not get your hand swiped. And for a quarterback, if you get hit early and often, you're going to be thinking about it the whole day. So for the Texans defense, find a way to generate some of these pressures early and often. I don't care if you take one of your coverage elements and throw them in there. Send an extra guy, make Patrick feel the heat early. I think that's going to be the matchup to watch. Do the Texans have a great rush plan to get after Patrick and get him off rhythm and out of his schedule?
Yeah, in the words of the great American philosopher Lil Wayne, even when a wolf cries, you still can see its teeth. Meaning, yes, they're vulnerable, they're still deadly. And that's the issue with Pat Mahomes. So everything you mentioned, Kyle, with him having an ankle element, he's shown all of us in years past, even when he's hurt, he is still deadly. And you need to attack him as such. And I'm right there with you in things that I'm watching, because we know if he plays, he's nowhere close to being 80%, better yet 100%. But if you go out and you think because that wolf is crying, you still can't see his teeth, he will bite your head off. So can the Houston Texans do what they've been doing the entire year to every quarterback they face and putting relentless pressure on those said quarterbacks? Danielle Hunter has been one of the bigger signings for this team outside of Joe Mixon. He's second in the National Football League in sacks, 12 sacks. As a defense, because of how good Danielle Hunter has been, they're number 2 in the National Football League in team sacks, right? So they've done a great job in doing what? Putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And because of the pressure they've been putting on quarterbacks, the guys in the back end like Derek Stingley and Bullock, they've been able to get turnovers, interceptions. So if they can put pressure on Pat Mahomes, especially with him being a bit wounded, there lies the opportunity for them to do what they've been doing the entire season and give their offense and CJ Stroud extra possessions. But if they go out and they attack Pat Mahomes like, oh, you know what? He's wounded. He's crying. He's not feeling good. You're going to see them teeth. And by the time you see them teeth, it's too late to move. He got you right in the clamps of his jaw. So that's what I'm watching.
That's why I think in this game, the single most important player on the football field is Xavier Worthy, because we saw the graphic that was just on the screen there. Texans, lowest completion percentage allowed in the NFL this season. They don't make it easy to do what the Chiefs do, which is run, convert third down, run, convert third down. They don't give you those easy 5-6 yard gains that the Chiefs passing offense has been thriving on. They make it tough. But what they do give up is the explosive plays more often than not. They have a rookie safety in Kalen Bullock, who's given up a handful of busted coverages on the back end. They are not the most sound at that position. And what that tells me is Xavier Worthy, who Pat Mahomes has missed probably more times than he'd care to admit this season, because he is a guy with his 4.21 speed that has translated on those deep passes. He can give you those explosive plays. And now he's butchered a few of them himself, but if they can get on the same page at least once, hopefully twice, I think that's the difference, because it ain't going to be a CJ Stroud, Pat Mahomes shootout. That's not the kind of game I predict we'll see in this game. I predict a low scoring game. And with that being said, the 1 to 2 big plays, those will be the ones that change the game. Whoever can make them is, I think, the team that comes out on top.
Mike, I'm glad you brought up Xavier Worthy, because what has been the issue? We said the 4.21 speed is just too damn fast. And when you throw these balls to him outside the numbers, he's so fast when he's tracking the football, he loses sight of where he is on the football field. He stepped out of bounds a number of times before getting 2 feet down. I think if I'm Matt Nagy, I'm Andy Reid, anything that I scheme up for Xavier Worthy, it's double moves that end up over the middle of the field. I want to see him get targets between the hashes, because the only out of bounds you're going to do, you're going to be out of the playing field and in the end zone when you throw it to the middle of the field with Patrick Mahomes. I love that from you, Mike.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Hollywood Brown will be activated for this ball game, correct?
Yeah, we saw some clock emojis on the timeline, B-Mac.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's a hint, like, I'll be back. And if that's the case, he could be a huge addition for their offense in terms of what you talked about with Xavier Worthy. We've seen some good things from Juju Smith-Schuster here or there, but clearly they're lacking depth at the wide receiver position, not to mention experience, right? Because that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy in Xavier Worthy to kind of be your wide receiver 1/2, depending on what you're getting from D-Hop. But if you can get Hollywood Brown back to some capacity, maybe on a pitch count, but just understanding his athleticism and his speed and his experience, that can help the entire offense out. So we got to wait and see. But if he's able to return, that should be a plus for Pat Mahomes.
Oh, 100%. And if he does, if I'm Andy Reid, I'm just I am scheming up play action deep shots till the cows come home. I'm not trying to force those guys underneath targets. I want those big plays down the football field, because that's what they can provide. And because when I go max pro up front, that gives me help with Danielle Hunter, gives me help with Will Anderson. I'm not putting my tackles there on an island against probably the best edge rushing duo in the NFL. But the Chiefs aren't the only ones who have some O-line issues. The Texans on the opposite side of the ball are going to have a whale of a time trying to pass protect against Chris Jones, because while they've had a whale of a time trying to pass protect against anyone this season, especially on that interior, Kyle, how do we foresee this matchup going for this Texans offensive front?
Well, let me just tell you this. When you play against number 95, it's never going to be as you envisioned when you do your meditations and your visualization Saturday night in the hotel room. You might say, I'm going to get my right hand in on the V of his neck, and then I'm going to get my left hand to follow underneath. I'm going to have great leverage. I'm going to hop, and stop that big old son of a buck. Well, that just ain't the case. So I'm going to be having my eyes on the line of scrimmage right there, number 95 against whoever. And the guy plays the piano. So if he smells fish, he's going to the market. He wants to eat. He's pescatarian mode. That's the way Chris Jones likes to rush the passer. He finds a guy that he likes the matchup, and he's going to get it until they prove to him that the scheme can cover him up. Also, we talk about getting after guys and DeMeco Ryans and the things he likes to do to frustrate quarterbacks from his defensive side of the ball. Don't forget that Steve Spagnuolo exists on this Kansas City Chiefs staff, and that guy loves some exotic stuff. He loves for that offensive line to have a lot to look at. He likes to create that paralysis by analysis pre-snap, and that's what I fully anticipate to happen. I anticipate a lot of bodies around quarterbacks in this game, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or CJ Stroud. That's what it's going to be, pressures, and it's going to be one-on-one winners with Chris Jones when he does get the luxury of being blocked one-on-one.
Yeah, Chris Jones is the one defensive rusher on the Chiefs. He has no assigned seat. He can sit anywhere in the classroom, meaning he can move anywhere on the defensive line based on the matchup that he would like to try to exploit for that said play. And to your point, you have to know where 95 is, because he can line up at the 3, the 5. It doesn't matter at any given time. And he has that free range in their offense. But if you're Coach Spagnuolo as well, the issue for their defense has been coverage. We haven't seen the sticky-like coverage that we've grown accustomed to seeing, especially when they're sending these zero-like blitz concepts. So there's been some opportunities against the Kansas City Chiefs secondary. And if this is the game this is the game you do not want to be in your bag if you're Kansas City in the defensive secondary, because Nico Collins is a proven wide receiver one. Nico Collins can take over a ball game, and there will be one-on-one opportunities for Nico because we know Spags will send pressure, especially as they get closer to the red zone. He does not like allowing quarterbacks to sit and go through their progression. Can the guys in the back end hold up just long enough for their rushers to be disruptive against C.J. Stroud? Because if they do not, I like any matchup for Nico Collins in the secondary for Kansas City based on what he's been able to do this season when healthy.
I do think that the Texans being able to pick up blitzes is the story of this one. It has to be. They've been so bad at it all year long. And C. Spagnuolo is so good at targeting your weaknesses with those. And they have a guy in Leo Chanel who's one of the best blitzing off-ball linebackers in the NFL, who's basically like a defensive end on the second level of your defense. So if those get home, I think the Chiefs win this game. If the Texans are able to pick them up, like you said, Nico Collins, they don't have the corners to stick with him for longer than a second and a half, 2 seconds before that blitz. If it doesn't get home in that time span, he's going to be getting open. So going to be a fun one to watch.